We're recording. Before we start, I'd like to give a big thanks to our sponsors and supporters and all of the volunteers who make this conference possible. It's really an amazing feat to pull something like this off. There are sessions going 24/7 all at the same time. It takes a lot of volunteers to help moderate these session rooms, and it's really a great feat of organization. So thank you to our sponsors and supporters. Welcome to those of you who have joined. We'd like to see where everybody is presenting from, and what you can do to show us is go to the little tab that's just to the right of your participants box, and there's a list of icons in a horizontal row, vertical rather, and the second one down is a little sun icon. And if you click on that icon and then go over to the screen and double click, it'll show us where you all are. I guess it's just a single click actually. Great. So I see a lot of clicks in the northeast. That's where a lot of our presenters are coming from. I think I see one down near Antarctica. Okay, it's moving now. Great. And you can also chat in the chat box and let us know where you're joining from. I see one out there in the Pacific Ocean. And Lisa is joining from Berkeley, California. Great. So welcome everybody. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide now. And again, welcome to our presentation about virtual exchange. It's a pleasure to be here and helping to facilitate it. My name is Will Stewart, and I'm a program coordinator for the International Education and Resource Network. Specifically, I help to coordinate a language study abroad scholarship called NSLI-Y, or the National Security Language Initiative for Youth. And I'll give you a quick overview of the scholarship, since that'll give you some context for tonight's discussion. NSLI-Y is a U.S. State Department funded scholarship for American teens, and it's for teens to study languages less commonly taught in the United States. Students typically spend a summer or a year abroad in an intensive language-focused environment. It's a little bit different than other study abroads or a gap year, for example, because it's a lot more structured and language intensive. It's language focused. And one thing that we do here at IRON USA is to maintain an interactive website. And this website curates these student stories. So we encourage students to send us their stories about their exchange experience. And the interactive part of the website are these live online events that we do, and they're aimed at connecting students, teachers, and classrooms with our students abroad. All of the pictures that you see here on this slide are people who have taken part in these virtual exchanges. Students submit video, they have YouTube channels that they share their blogs, their reflections, their photos, and they're able to connect with classrooms of students who have similar interests. It's a really great way to expand the reach and broaden the reach of traditional exchanges, such as NSLI-Y. You know, not everyone is fortunate enough to participate in a study abroad program like this, and virtual exchanges can partially bridge that gap, and real-time online exchanges are a really engaging and authentic way for students to connect, to learn, and reflect. And as we'll see in this session, both the presenters and participants are deeply enriched with this type of peer-to-peer learning. So, without much further ado, I will introduce our presenters, who will in turn introduce themselves. We have students Brendan, Reagan, and Noah, who studied abroad on the NSLI-Y scholarship, and we have an educator, Shanli, whose classroom was involved in one of these virtual exchanges. And what you'll hear over the next 45 minutes or so are the reflections of the students in Shanley about the effect and that the participation in these virtual exchanges had on them, and I will let them get right to it. So I will pass it off to Noah.
All right. I hope everyone can hear me here. So I guess the first thing that I wanted to address was how it is on the kind of the student side if you are contributing content to kind of IRN's NSLI Interactive, which is the website that they've created so that students can share things. And I really, really enjoyed it because I have a history of producing videos just for my own engagement as a student and as a hobbyist. And then through this, I was able to share, all of the video that I was taking just for my own enjoyment with the people back home, with people who are potentially interested in the program, and of course, the people who live in Turkey and would like to see as much about how the foreigners are perceiving their home country as anyone else. And so this provides, and all of this content, whether I was writing or whether I was, using social media or whether I was sharing photos or creating video, goes into providing a window to the people back home, whether it's my family or whether it's other people who are interested in the program. And basically because of our role, especially on sponsored programs, the more you can share with people and the more different people you can tell, the reality about the country that you're in instead of their stereotypes and their preconceptions about what it's like to be in that country, the more you can directly engage with people and the more people you can touch, the more effectively you can share how your experience impacted you and inform people a little more what the reality is like in that country. And so you can see some contributions I made to NSLI Interactive, as well as our virtual event, which was called A Day in the Life in Turkey. So I guess the next thing I wanted to share was a film I made, and it looks like that is loading at the moment. All right, I'm back. Anyway, all of those videos and videos that other people are also making are available on the NSLI Interactive YouTube channel, and you can go check that out as well as by searching my name. And so I guess I would add that, being able to produce multimedia content and being active, as a lot of people are getting used to sharing things on social media and just engaging with people at home is the best way, as we're seeing, especially presently. It's exceedingly important to engage with as many people as you can and share your experiences and act as a cultural ambassador and an ambassador of culture, and to get rid of as many preconceptions as you can. Not only, with the people at home, but also with the people in your host country. And so they can learn from what you write and what you film, how you perceive their country and how your experiences inform how you view things that they do. And that can create a lot of discussion. If you read any blog post, I guarantee it's being, or your host family's also reading it and feeding it into Google Translate, and that's going to happen. And I guess I'd add that you don't need any special film equipment. If you just have a little handheld camera, that's what I filmed all of that on, and it's really not about equipment or anything else. You can keep something in your front pocket or in your backpack. And also, sharing experiences like this provides a personal kind of opportunity to reflect, not while you're back in America or back in having gone through reverse culture shock. It's while you're abroad. It's exactly how you feel about things at the time. And I guess the only thing I'd wish I'd known about doing virtual exchange and doing exchange in general is how much of a personal growth opportunity it is. It is an opportunity to learn a lot more about yourself than at least I had in the entire preceding 18 years of my life. And I think that's a lot of the value of it, is to be able to learn and grow and help other people do the same. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Reagan, and I was also on the 2014-2015 NSLI academic year with Noah over in Izmir, Turkey. And I also did the same virtual event, A Day in the Life of Turkey with Noah. And so I just want to talk a little bit about what the event was and what we went over. And so we each talked on a different section. There were 4 of us speaking, and we talked about school, food, language learning, family, and activities. And so as somebody that had not participated previously in a webinar, I think that it would have been super useful too, because of course you can talk to the people there and chat with them on Facebook and everything, but it's a lot different than actually seeing pictures and listening to them talk and elaborate on their experiences and kind of just giving you more than a brief overview. So for example, school, we talked about what the school life was like there because it was very different than in America. Food was just the type of cuisine, and of course you can look it up, but when you're living with a host family, it's also going to be a bit different. And so it was just kind of like a general description of like the different type of meals we eat and what you can find out and about. Language learning was in regards to our language class, which was, we did a mixture of activities of reading, writing, speaking, and everything like that. Host family life was, some of the challenges and things we had to overcome, some of the adjustments we had to make with living with a host family and everything, like how it was super beneficial, especially to language learning. And as Noah mentioned in his video, like having a relation with your host family turned out to be a super big deal because it really does determine part of your life overseas and everything. And then activities were just, the different extracurricular activities we did, what we did outside of school, what we did with our family, sports, cultural excursions, traveling, and all that stuff. And so, as I mentioned, I hadn't participated in a webinar before, but giving the webinar, I really thought about what I wish I knew. And so what I really wish I knew before going over to Turkey for the year was more about the school life. We were attending a Turkish high school, which is very, very different from an American high school in all aspects, from social to like just their entire curriculum and everything, and the way their entire education system is structured is very different than in America. And so it was just a very big adjustment. And since we were spending about 8 hours at school a day, we were there for the whole school day, a lot of our time was spent there. And so I just really wish I had gotten more information because I really came into it not knowing much at all. And the other thing was the atmosphere of the city we were living in. And so that, of course, makes a huge difference, like how I feel and everything. I was worried going over to Turkey, especially as like a girl, but it was an extremely safe city and everything. And I really just couldn't get a feel for the city until I got there. And so one thing I tried to cover in the webinar was, like more the atmosphere of the city, to give people more of an idea of what it was actually like to live over there. And so giving this webinar really acted as a reflective process for me. It really allowed me to look at my whole experience as an American, because you go in there with an open mind and you automatically start adjusting to the culture and everything in your host family life. And a lot of times you don't really realize the changes you're making in your life and like what is different than America until you step back and look at it. And so during that webinar, that really gave me a chance to think, if I had never been to Turkey, like if I was living in America now and I was coming here next year, what would I want to know? And so it was also super beneficial to prepare me to my return for the United States, because when I got to look at it from an American point of view, I really thought about what things were different, what things might be interesting or like catch people off guard and everything. And so those give me a lot of points of talking to come home. And of course, when you come home from a year abroad, everyone's going to say, how was Turkey? What was it like and everything? And so by giving this webinar, I was able to reflect a lot. And then I had specific points that I could talk about, specific challenges and like especially differences, what I had missed about America, and then all these things that I could give a more elaborate answer than just, oh, it was great, or oh, it was fun. And so it was one of the best things that came out of this webinar on my behalf, as well as sharing everything I did with people interested in Turkey and everything. That was great, and educating people more on what life was like over there for us. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to Brendan.
Let's see. Hey guys. Not sure if you guys can see me yet. Let's see. I think it's working. Okay, even if not, I'm just going to start talking. So my name's Brendan Ryan, and I participated in NSLI as well, and I went to Taiwan for 9 months. And right now I'm currently studying at the University of Mississippi. So doing the whole exchange with Americans while I was abroad, like communicating online, was really, really cool for me. And I think that like Noah and Reagan like really put it like really well. Like it really helps you reflect kind of on what your experience was and what it means in the American perspective. Because I think whenever you're abroad, you kind of forget what it's like to be an American to a certain extent. You just kind of are like looking through the world, trying to look at the world through the perspective of your host country. And so it was really important for me, at least, doing exchanges to step back and kind of re-examine how Americans would perceive my experience, and how that really helped me understand how to go about sharing it. So I kept a blog while I was in Taiwan, which is what you guys are looking at currently. And for me, having a blog was like keeping a blog was really, really great, because it was, when I wrote it, I got to sit down and I got to kind of reflect on my experience, which for me was like amazing, because you're experiencing all these like crazy things or things that feel crazy, and so it was really great for me to sit down. I usually did it on Sundays, and just kind of think through what was going on. And then I also got to share it with my family and my friends abroad, which was great, because when I got back, they also were like, oh, I saw your blog and I saw the things you posted. And so it was really good for me to get to do that. And I got to point out a lot of the big differences. I see Lucy, you asked what's the biggest difference I observed, and I would say that would probably just be lifestyle, because I grew up in like a fairly rural area, and city life was really different, which is something I think I would have liked to have known better, which I think is something virtual exchanges can offer. Just understanding how vastly different the lifestyle is compared to, at least for me, what American life means. And I also think, it's really funny what Noah said about like host parents going back and like reading your blogs, because that is so true. My host parents definitely would like Google Translate my blog and ask me like different things that it meant. But so I also participated in a NSLI interactive event, which is just where we talk to American students. And so I talked to students from Shanley, another presenter class, and it was really honestly kind of inspiring to me to get to talk to them, because it was really great because they got to ask us questions in Chinese, and so it was really cool for me to get to see them in America using Chinese to ask us while we're abroad all these questions. And it was also really neat because the questions they asked me weren't necessarily the type of things that we were expecting. At least, for example, they asked like if we like to sing and if we did like karaoke and that sort of thing, which I don't know, I guess I like haven't really thought about the type of things people would ask me about my exchange. And so that really helped me in terms of also reflecting on it. And it was also really cool for me to get to do like the whole like exchange through the virtual event as well, because it was another thing where it gave me time to kind of like sit back and relax and kind of think about exactly how to share these things. Very similar to the experience of writing a blog. And so one of the things that I shared about during the virtual event itself was ways to go about learning Chinese, specifically in an immersion environment. And so for me that was really interesting, because I've always, I think like learning how to learn is a very important thing. And so it was interesting for me personally to like invest some time into just sitting back and like kind of comparing the differences between studying Chinese in Taiwan versus studying Chinese in America, because they're vastly different things. And it's something I hadn't really thought about or even really appreciated until I was preparing for the virtual event. And I was like, my goodness, my study style abroad is completely different from what it was in America. And that honestly was fantastic for me. And one of the other students on my program, Freya, also shared a lot about talking about like school dynamics in Taiwan. And it was actually really cool to hear some of the other students on my program talking about these things to Shanley students, because Freya really brought up a lot of points about kind of classroom dynamics in Taiwan that are like vastly different from America, like students not necessarily like jumping to answer questions as they would in America, and students kind of being, I guess, more antisocial, like from the American perspective, which was really interesting for me because hearing her talk about that also kind of got me thinking like, oh wow, like it really is so different. And so honestly, that was a great experience for me. And I think that's about all I have to say. I really enjoyed talking to you all. If you have any questions, just post them in the chat box. I'm going to pass it on to Shanley.
Hi, Shanley. Can you just make sure that you've clicked on the talk button? I don't think that we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now you can see me and hear me. Yes. So, hi everyone. This is Shanley speaking from Boston. I teach at Boston Latin School, and for Chinese 2, Chinese 4, and Comprehensive Chinese. I appreciate the experience that for that virtual meeting, because just like what Brandon say, a lot of experience that my student and Brandon and other study abroad student exchange is quite valuable, because they would never experience anything like that, and be able to talk to them in person and present themselves in Chinese is really an eye-opening. As a teacher, over here in Boston, we have this invitation, and I create a thematic unit, and I like the topic One Day of My Life. And instead of as an exchange student in Taiwan, we are doing that at the Boston Latin School. So we sort of create a blog for each student, and they will compare and contrast their life at the Boston Latin School, and then the students like Brandon's, who will live in Taiwan, in Kaohsiung, and the local school. As he just mentioned, the lifestyle and the cultural perspectives is quite different. I still remember when I was little, when I grew up in Kaohsiung, we are not supposed to talk in classroom. We're supposed to listen and read the textbook and, you know, pass the exam. That's what we're supposed to do. And learning English is the same way. We just have to memorize the vocabulary and then the sentence structures, and then maybe even memorize the whole essay. That's how we learn English. And then listen to the radio and try to be ready for the conversation. And of course, now we learn language and culture and area study in a very different way. We are more interactive, and we are learning it by presenting, by doing research. So my students would also analyze the similarity and differences between those daily activity in Boston, the daily activity, what Brandon and other exchange students were presented over there in Kaohsiung, in Taiwan. And we do that in Chinese and then also in English. Through that experience, I actually my student create the blog. And that's very helpful, because that means they can post or even present as a video for both English and Chinese posting, and they can keep it as a journal, and they can track their own progress and also track their own development. For my other class, as a comprehensive Chinese students, those are seniors, and the class is in English, they will develop their own cross-cultural research project, and they will learn how to do attitude scale using Google Forms, and also survey their own students, classmates, and interest groups to gather their result. And so one of my project in unit is some students are interested in air quality, then they will do the air quality attitude scale and also present that. So as Brandon just mentioned, the way we learn is quite different, and the way we learn language is including the culture and also all the others in order to learn this language and cultures as a global education, like what we are participating right now. And I think that will enrich every student's experience, and also will expand both students and teachers' view and to different cultures and languages, and also have a lot of different life experience. I think those exchange students really open up another window for us through the real life experience. That's the way to learn a language and the cultures, and also broaden our perspectives. So we know that the world around us is really providing us a lot of different perspectives and different views, and we will learn to respect that and learn from it. And I think that would be the whole experience that brought us to be able to communicate with the people around us and make it as meaningful and as responsible as possible. Part of my students' assignment, they need to create the blog. They need to post their assignment or their reflections both in Chinese and in English, and they also need to be able to insert the video clip and also the photos. So it's also information media search, and as well as the digital media presentation. So they need to be able to do that and create those projects that we show them. And so in the future, both Ney and Bren are my Chinese 2 and Chinese 4 students, and this year they joined me for comprehensive Chinese as a senior. So they would like to learn more about the language, cultures, and histories, geography, especially the current event for that. So I believe Ney's topic is about comparison for both American education and the education in China and Taiwan. And also Bren's interest is about the elder care. So the filial piety, that is the Chinese concept, specific to take care of the elders and the aged parents. So Bren's interest is do more study about that, compare that among the U.S. and China and Taiwan. So those are their interests. And Marco is 10th grader now, so he is in Chinese 3, and he will join us, in the future. I'm sure he will, get into AP Chinese, and then hopefully senior year he will join me to study the comprehensive Chinese and learn more about it. I have a lot of fun, learning and teaching with my students. And now I have another family that is the virtual meetings and also those exchange students around the world. I really enjoy through those virtual meetings and learn from their experience and listen to them, just as if I were there with them in Turkey, in Taiwan, in all over the world. So I really enjoy the experience. And thank you so much for giving me this experience to provide my little thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you to the presenters. Really, really great reflections there, and So glad that you could be with us this evening. And I'll type in the chat box the website or the blog that Shanley made to share her students' stories and their reflections about their experience with virtual exchange, and in particular the NSLI-Y interactive events with the alumni that we have with us today. We have a question and answer session. I know there are only a couple people who are with us now. The session will be recorded. It's a bit later on the East Coast, so hopefully people will benefit from seeing this on the website once it's posted. But were there any questions for our presenters? And feel free to write your questions in the chat box, or I can give you the microphone if you just write in the chat box. So if Sienna or Lucy or Michelle, if you have any questions, go ahead and let us know in the chat box, and I can pass the microphone to you. Or you can just write the question in the chat box and one of the students can answer it for you. So Nicole has a question, and you can see it in the chat box. It's, what advice would you give current exchange students in terms of virtual exchange opportunities? Any of you can jump in and answer the question in the chat box, or you can grab the microphone.
Okay, I can answer that really quick, just what I think. Going off of especially what Brendan talked about with blogs, I really think if you're a current exchange student, I think blogs are one of the best kind of virtual exchange opportunities you have, because first of all, they're always there. They're always something you can go back to and read, as well as you can share with a lot of people. Webinars and stuff are great as well, but you kind of have to have a whole setup and things organized. So if there's really not an opportunity for you to share your experience and everything through a webinar, I personally recommend blogging. I did that as well, and even going back now, it's only been a few months, but going back and reading my blog posts and everything, you remember things that I wouldn't have necessarily remembered if I hadn't written it down. And you can do a whole bunch of things from, day-to-day activities to also kind of like your feelings during it, what kind of things you've learned and everything. And so I know halfway through I did like differences between Turkey and America, and like what I've noticed were different. And if I hadn't, really thought about that and really tried to pay attention to it, there were a lot of things that I wouldn't have noticed were different just because you get so used to them. So my advice for you, Nicole, would just be blogging.
Thank you, Reagan. Yeah, so there are, for virtual exchange, there are both kind of formal events you can participate in, but there's also the sort of informal avenues such as blogging and making YouTube videos, and those are all really great ways to share with your family and friends back home, and with just anyone who's interested, really. So that's one thing that any educator can encourage their students to do, is just to keep track of their experience using some sort of social media. And I think that any of the students here would also give the same advice to peers who are on exchange in terms of the benefits of being able to reflect on their experience through the documentation of their experience. I actually had a quick question, and if Noah, if you could answer the question, or rather kind of expand on your experience making films. I know you said that all you needed was a pocket camera. You didn't need any kind of fancy equipment. What did you take little bits of video every day? Did you take long videos and then assemble them? Did you have things in mind beforehand? And what kind of software did you use, in case there are any students or teachers who are joining in who are curious about how their students could make videos like that, or document their experiences like you did.
All right, I'd be glad to answer that. Yeah, I mean, in terms of software, I was just using what was on my computer, and that could be iMovie, but I was using Final Cut because I had done some work in film ahead of time. But it's not necessary. I mean, you could even put something together on your phone, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend, you know, the default software that comes with a computer. And building on that, when I did things that I thought were going to look very visually interesting, like if I went to a site with like Ephesus, which was right near with the city where we were, or like some other trip, I wanted to remember that, and I knew I wanted it for posterity's sake as well as to share with people the beauty. And that can be an incentive for people to go on exchange and just to get them through the door far enough to where they start to be interested, and then that leads to a whole avalanche of engagement with your desire to become an exchange student. And I guess what I wish I had done was taken more videos just of a day in the life, like we had presented on. Just if we had included, you know, what a regular routine was like for me, I think that would be absolutely enlightening, and I know I would have loved to see that just if I was a potential NSLI student, or something I could look back on and show my friends and family throughout my history. But no, I focused on special excursions that I was on, and I concentrated my filming then. But I mean, honestly, if you can break down into some sort of narrative and provide voiceover to that is something people really appreciate. I know my mom pestered me a lot. She wanted to hear my voice, and she wanted to hear what my thoughts on it were instead of just a bunch of cool visuals. So you can definitely improve on even the work that I was doing. Thanks for asking, Will.
Thank you, Noah. Yeah, I think a lot of people are intimidated by the idea of making a film, and you know, while there are definite technical skills that make films and pictures and presentations better, you know, it shouldn't deter anyone from starting, and you know, you can use pretty simple tools to do that. So yeah, thank you so much for that that explanation of your process. Did anyone else have any more questions? Go ahead and type them in the chat box. And if you wish, we can pass the microphone to you as well. Just let us know. And just so you know, the website that we were talking about that has the virtual events is NSLI-Y for Youth. That's the website for the scholarship, and then the website with all of the pictures and videos, that's NSLI-Y-interactive.org. And then it looks like Lucy has a question, and so I think it's directed at
Lucy, I'm going to try to answer.
Thank you, Reagan.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say for Lucy, okay, I'm going to try to answer your question. If I am understanding it correctly, you're asking what kind of experiences I gained from being over there. And, I mean, there are definitely experiences that you gain, like, through activities and everything, but I think a lot of the things that, like, new experiences that I was able to bring back to me were just, like, learning how to interact in social settings with people you didn't know, and like learning to put yourself out there. You know, for example, we were put into a Turkish high school, didn't speak any Turkish really. Those kids didn't speak any English, so you really just had to, you know, make yourself conversational and find the most random things to talk about with your limited Turkish. Another thing is, living overseas can be hard, especially when you're with a host family and you're not understanding the language, and you're, you know, out and about all day trying your best, but you have to look up the same word like 7 times. Something like that kind of taught me to like really appreciate the little things, and like that's something I've definitely easily been able to bring back with me, because, you know, whenever you're having a bad day or something, like there's always going to be some good in every day, and like Turkey really taught me that, to see those kind of things. I hope that covers it. I mean, other than that, of course, you're going to have your experiences with your host family and the experiences of creating friendship and learning the language and experiencing culture and really feel like you're immersing yourself. And I think that's something that, you know, everyone can get out of an exchange. It just kind of takes time and patience and everything with that. And so those are all things that I've definitely been able to bring back. And whenever I reflect on my years, you know, those things come to mind.
Hey, thanks, Reagan. That was great. It looks like, excuse me, it looks like we have a question from Sienna for Shanley, and Shanley's answered it in the chat box. And the question was one of the biggest challenges of teaching language to students. And Shanley responded with an interesting response about, you know, keeping an open mind to different perspectives. And so not only do we have grammar and rules of the language, but to really understand the culture, you know, you have to keep an open mind as well. And I think that everyone involved in these exchanges would agree that language is definitely the key to learning about a different culture. So very well put, Shanley. Thank you. I would ask at this time that anyone who has any personal websites or blogs that they would like to share, if you could write the links to those in the chat box, that would be great. I know, Noah, you keep a website where we have a lot of content. Brendan, you have your blog. So if you'd like to share those with everyone who's with us, I'm sure that they'd like to look at those when they have a chance. And I'm going to advance the slide now to say thank you to everybody. You know, really, really appreciate everybody preparing their slides and their reflections. And it's really wonderful to hear about how those experiences with exchange and virtual exchange really have a ripple effect. And, you know, just looking at some of those reflections from our NSLI students, and also hearing about the blogs, the great blogs that Shanley's students are creating and contributing to, is really inspiring. So heartfelt thank you to you all, and we will wrap up. I'm going to stop the recording there.